That, my friends, is a little taste of the Dreadbox Hades, and those of you who know me and Sonicstate will probably say, Dreadbox, eh? I know Nick's very fond of those, and I will agree, I do like the Dreadbox sound. I've not come across the Hades before. It's quite peculiar, really. I was a big fan of the Erebus, and the original Hades came out around the same time. The original was about 2016. This is the reissue one. This comes in a little box that you can just kind of work on the desktop, or comes with a header cable so you can put it in your Eurorack system. They call it an analog bass synthesizer, and it's based on the original. If we look up here, this is the original. This looks a lot like the original Erebus. Got the same wood sides, same sort of vibe. It's quite a simple synthesizer. Then they came out with the DIY version, which is you built yourself. Actually had quite a lot more outputs and patch points, sync, oscillator out, and maybe a bit more flexible, but was again different. And now we're back up to the desktop version. Now, this is really simple. I'll tell you what essentially we've got here. We've just got a single oscillator with two subs, 1 octave down, 2 octave downs. These are both square waves. Then we've got their excellent filter. This is actually a 3-pole filter, quite an unusual design. Sounds very creamy and very 4-pole, but not at all like a ladder. You don't lose any of the low end when you're bringing the resonance in. Then we've got a very powerful VCA. This has got a drive circuit in it, which is OTA Drive. ADSR switchable envelope, which can be between ADS and ADRS. Then there's an AR envelope for the amplifier level, glide, pulse width modulation. The oscillator can switch between sawtooth and square or off, so you just listen to the subs. And then there's, I think this is a triangle LFO. Really simple, nothing going on there, and then a very basic patch bay. This is the output, and this is just the MIDI input, because the MIDI input comes into this, and then we can access the various patch points, really simple patch points. We can switch off legato mode, we can switch off the channel or omni mode just via these toggle switches. It really is very basic. And you know me, I'm a big fan of the Dreadbox sound, and this has got that thing going on, even though it's very basic. So let's start with our classic overhead shot, and we'll just listen to the oscillator. So you see nice low fundamental, and the shape of the triangle wave is okay. It's got that kind of slight curve to it. Now, this isn't the converters, because I've tried it into a scope, and to my ears, it sort of doesn't matter so much. Slight variations just sort of give a certain amount of character. So if we come back to this shot, and we've got a square wave as well, which we can modulate. It doesn't go through 0 on the pot, but you can via the LFO. We'll get a bit onto that later. Then we can switch it to 0, and we can so that's basically no sound, and then we can bring up the subs. And you can see just the massive fundamental there is down there. There is a ton of low end on this. I'm not pounding the speakers in the room because things start to shake. So, go back to this shot, bring that down, then we've got an octave even lower. So if I bring this up a bit, so that's basically 3 octaves. So we've got square wave, 3 square waves. If we change that to a sawtooth, it's quite an interesting change in the sound. That's off, sawtooth, square. And this sort of, again, it highlights these sort of little nooks and crannies that you find quite often with a simple synthesizer. There's places in there where you just go, oh, that's nice, never really noticed that before. And this is a bit like that. So, filter, let's just come out, take these oscillators down. We'll go classic sawtooth. Sounds like a third up and down on the tuning there. So take this down an octave. And these harmonics are delightful. slightly unstable, and it's just, there's some really, if we bring a bit of, and bring up the release, just some real, and then bring in a sub octave. That's just the depth of the envelope there. Some really nice kind of, I guess, fruity and plummy. I mean, all of those sort of things. And they're really quite pleasing. There's some lovely little sort of plucked harmonics you can pluck out of there that just kind of go, ooh, that's nice. So yeah, it does do bass end. I mean, not surprisingly, I mean, it is after all called an analog bass synthesizer, and that's pretty much what it is, right? So coming back to our shot here. Bring glide in. We can switch the envelope to legato mode, which I'm in at the moment, or off, which means it's done. See, if I'm holding a key here, it'll trigger all the same, and if I switch it into legato mode, it'll only re-trigger once there's a complete kind of note off in between. So again, nice for sort of playing monophonic lines and all that kind of stuff. Next up, we should listen to what the drive does, because it is astonishing. Watch the level here, because it's going to get loud. This is an OTA Drive circuit. And it really does go. So if I've got... That's the amount of extra drive and distortion you can get. And when you start building the amount of, you know, the number of levels going into, signals going into the filter and then into the amplifier, you get some really quite over the top drive. And so it's capable of sort of clean, because if we bring it back here, that's much cleaner, isn't it? Yeah, very nice. Okay, there's more. I mean, as I say, there's not an awful amount to say. It's just the sort of character of these building blocks is what makes the Dreadbox stuff so appealing, I think. And, you know, the drive is just, you know, goes from nothing at all to really over the top, and the filter by the same token can do the same thing. So let's just actually I should just double check the whether we can get a bit of so that's just the filter. So now if I take the 1 volt per octave out and go into the filter, let's see what happened. So if that's a bit piercing, we'll just come back here. Let's... Not terribly good on tracking just the filter. I thought I'd just throw that in there. Really, you're going to be using this more for bass sense, but it would have been nice to have that filter calibrated a little bit more so that we could just, an extra function that you might ordinarily not expect to see. Right, let's take that out of there. So that's, again, I'm just using the patch bay. You will notice that these patch points, they don't have nuts holding them in place. So this is, again, another sort of sign of where they've been able to cut some of the manufacturing costs. I mean, I don't feel that this is cheap and nasty by any stretch, and they've obviously had to cut some manufacturing costs to be able to bring it in at a reasonable price, because they are a small manufacturer, but it's just worth mentioning there. Okay, right, let's go on to the LFO. So the LFO, we'll take the LFO out and put it into the VCF. Let's do that. Interestingly, the depth works on the output of the LFO, so you can dial that in from the depth control. You don't have to use another attenuator, which is good because there's nothing going on the patch bay really that allows us to do that. So It sounds like probably a triangle. Actually, we can probably tell if I just come out of the LFO, we can probably have a look and see what that is. What does that look like? Let's bring it up to... Yeah, we can see there that is in fact a triangle, a very nice straight triangle, but I just wanted to double check that. So we'll go back here, LFO out into... So it goes from really, I mean like really, really slow, static I would call that. Right up to incredibly audio rate, which means that we can do this kind of talking filter stuff. There is no attenuator, so there's no way to kind of modulate the depth, the level of this. You'd need some external stuff to get that stuff going on, which is, that's just the way it is, unfortunately. It would be nice if we did have a few more patch points on here, but we don't, so I can't really... Nice. So let's another use of the LFO. Let's put that into the pulse width. There's a nice little touch here, and this is again one of these little nooks and crannies that you get in the design of an instrument like this. So let me show you what that is. So essentially, we can see what's going on. It's basically, if we move this over to the left, this is the actual width setting. Far enough, goes through 0. That's kind of cool. Then we put it over to this side, comes from 0. So we've got kind of two ways of going through 0. But if we put it in the middle, we get both of the zeros. So effectively we get double the speed of the LFO because we're getting the through 0 on either side. Kind of interesting, and then we can get it right up again into audio rates, which just provides again audio rate pulse width modulation, which is quite an unusual. Can get some really interesting harmonic stuff. You might hear there is a little bit of bleed. Just hear that high end off the, you can see it on the frequency up there, that sort of, you can see that little high end bleed, that little peak there, which is a bit of a drag, but it's not that big a deal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to patch the velocity output of the keyboard into the VCF, so we just get a little bit more going on. Some quite interesting stuff going on with that audio rate mod. So if I bring, and I suppose at this point we could be pining for some of those extra features that we saw in the DIY version. Obviously we've got the LFO as a square wave output and a triangle output and blendable. Not only that, but we've also got oscillator output and sync in, which are useful things to have when you're doing a kind of more synthesis in a basic synthesizer. I mean, I understand why they didn't do this, because obviously this is a reissue of the original and they wanted to stay 100% true to the original, and presumably there might have been some cost implications to this. Essentially, this is almost a different synthesizer to the one we have here. Let's just try something else. I'll take the LFO out and go into the VCA, so we can get, again, that sort of triangle just... That's quite quite nice. Let's just put a bit of effects on here. I've got the old MSCD70. Let's get this out into audio. And let's have the let's get the velocity into the VCF as well, so we could get, you know, some complex patches. Places where we can get this kind of, these additional tonal variations that you're just thinking, oh, I've not really thought about it. The only thing I would like to have seen is some way, because this is such a high audio rate LFO, it'd been really good to have some patch point in here for the LFO speed, so we could have used something to modulate that, because while it's fine to be able to use the front panel controls, it's nice to be able to kind of get some other modulation action in there if we can, but I'll take those effects off. So as you can hear, I mean, it's not just, you know, you could do your 303 stuff and drive it up. I mean, like I said, this already, you know, it's quite dirty because I'm using audio rate mod, but I haven't even brought the drive in, so. Almost got kind of ring mod stuff going. Let's put that in the PWM. Modulating these different parameters with that audio rate LFO is actually, you know, can lead to some quite interesting shapes. I don't know, I find, you know, this instrument is very basic, but it's got the sort of, the heart of it is something that sounds really impressive. And yeah, it's not got memories, it's, you know, all of those things, but it does get you to some very interesting sonic places with a surprisingly few controls and patch points. Just one thing, we will take this out of the box now. I don't know if you can see this, it uses tiny little Allen key, so you need an Allen key to get that out. So I'll just open this up and we'll take a look and see what's inside. Let's take these out. Okay. Yeah, worth mentioning, you don't need to undo these ones. These are just for internal use only, I guess. So we'll just flip this up. And then we just take this little board off here, popping that off, and there's there's our little header cable slot is in that way, so you just pop that in there. Then we've got the header cable that we can put into our Eurorack case. Okay, so I'll just play a few kind of patch examples just to sort of maybe take you through a few ideas of what this could do outside of what I've already done. So I've got velocity coming in here just to give me a bit of touch sensitivity, and then the LFO is driving the pulse width. Incidentally, there is no normalization from the LFO to any of these things, which is an interesting approach. Okay, this one, I've just got velocity again, and not using the PWM for anything, but I'm just using, close the filter down, and a little bit of envelope depth gives me sort of 303 style, but with masses of low end. Adding some drive onto that. Everybody needs a 303, right? Gets really gnarly very quickly. This one's a sort of talking, subtle talking. Just using the LFOs of the VCF. Again, don't really need much drive on this. Sawtooth and one sub-octave. Okay, this one I brought a little bit of kick drum in. I'm just going to sort of jam around with a sound that I made on here. So let's just throw this one up and bring the sound up. So we've got just a tune kick. I've got aftertouch coming into the the VCF. It's just got a really nice got a little bit of LFO coming into the CV, so for modulation. So there's another little sound. The thing is that there are these lovely low harmonics that you can pull out, which just I think are really nice. I mean, if you're looking for kind of more contemporary bass sounds with timed LFOs and things, then it's probably not for you, but something that's a bit more organic and you can sort of really feel what's going on down there, well worth checking out. This one's just got a little bit of snap. So this is a, maybe drive that up a bit. Using that envelope there with quite a lot of depth to give it that tick sound. Bring a bit of that reverb in, sounds quite nice. Maybe that'll sound good with this bass drum again. So anyway, I hope that's given you an idea of what this is capable of. As ever, if you're interested in following us on Patreon, there may well be some more extra stuff on the Hades, but there's other stuff that we post there besides, if you're looking for ad-free versions of everything that we do on YouTube, plus Sonic Talk pre-show, plus there's samples and patches and exclusive videos there. Please do join us. So that was the Dreadbox Hades, back from the underworld, as they say about the reissue. A nice little tagline there. It's Analog Bass Synthesizer, monophonic, and it's around about 350 UK pounds. Other currencies will scroll below. Now, this isn't the cheapest thing that you can buy, but it's certainly got something special about it. There's a thing that Dreadbox have, and this one has it too. So if that's a thing you must have, then it's well worth checking out. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.
Ow.